I think my favorite thing this year, and I actually don't know that we started it this year. We might have started it in 21, but figuring out like our money stuff, like understanding, implementing profit first, getting our tax stuff figured out more so than we had.
Yeah.
Figuring out like what do we want to achieve, like setting these like crazy goals like we did early on in that process.
Yeah.
Like I think that to me is like the biggest thing that we've done. And I feel like what you said about, I don't actually remember what you said for like the biggest or maybe it was you were talking about like us figuring out like what we were doing. Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yes. But I feel like even figuring out the money stuff like helped us figure that out.
Oh, I think so.
So like that's my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Jess over at the Bottom Line CPA. And she, I mean, honestly, like she was just somebody that was recommended to us by Chris, and she works with a ton of like basically like her team goes in and they manage your books. And we did some coaching with Jess, who kind of helps you implement the profit first stuff. But like she works with a ton of online businesses, and I agree. I think that was like a fantastic move by us. And I've told people, I've told friends of mine that are like in masterminds with me about that stuff, and they're like, "Nah, I don't want to do that." I think there's a little bit of like a not negative connotation towards profit first, but I think people are just like, they don't quite understand it. But I think it's been good. It's just a really clear system for, figuring out how you're going to pay yourself, how much profit you're going to take, all that. Cause that's like one of the weirder things about business is like,
learning
it's like
how to allocate how much money you
Yeah.
can spend on operating expenses, on subcontractors, on, paying yourself, like how to use and invest profit. Like that's a huge thing to learn. And I think it's probably the big thing that like keeps people from, like, you can hustle to 7 figures, like you can hustle to $1 million.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like you have to start figuring things out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's been the biggest part of our journey from 2018 to now, because we did achieve that in the first year. And so everything since then has been going through like common mistakes of like, and to try and figure things out. So it's like, we finally feel like we're going into 2023 with stuff figured out, and like we've made those mistakes and like to go to the next level. But like learning all that with the finance stuff, and it's this concept too of like, the reason it's called Profit First, for those of you who've never heard of it, and like this is a book, like you can go read the book, but it's this idea of like, when you are building a business, like making sure that your family gets fed before you do anything else, like making sure that you are paying yourself, because we all have this tendency. There's 2 things I feel like we do. It's like when you come into a big whoosh of money, you tend to like just like take the money and go use it for things. But then when you're in a normal growth period, like you tend to sacrifice taking money out of the business in order to invest in things or to grow the business. And so, and that can lead to you not ever really growing your income or having one of those businesses that's high revenue and like you don't make a lot of money. And so it's just like, it's cool in the sense that like, we know like when we look at our income statements and it says like, we've made this much money, like even if you were in a situation where you made like, you broke even, right? You've already paid yourself. So like when we look at our stuff, no matter what the number is, no matter if like how high or low the profit is for that month or that quarter or whatever, we got paid a baseline, right? And so, and we're, growing that, trying to grow that over time. But it's just very comforting to know like, okay, like I'm going to get a paycheck from my business this month in this amount, and like kind of, especially if you're a solopreneur or like you have a very small, like maybe you have an assistant or like a right-hand person, like knowing that like my bills are covered, right? Because I've built that into the business. And like, that's the big concept. And there's a lot more we do with like tax planning and all that kind of stuff. And I appreciate all of it, but I think that's the big piece that's like really cool.